isolation, synchronized chaos, and a coup d'etat. The scariest thing about this movie is the fact that this scenario can happen today. In this very world, in America that we live in today, this tactic, this movie could happen and it could destroy society as we know it. Shit, this movie was good. Hey guys, Shalom here. Welcome to the Bin Zone. On today's video, we're gonna be looking at the Netflix original movie, Leave the World Behind. And this movie has a lot for us to dive into because it goes ahead and it shows us the systematic way in which America could be destroyed from within and from outside, and it's all a real possibility with the way our lives are structured today and our reliance on the internet and the way we just work as a society. But before we dive too deep into the real world ramifications of what this could mean, let's dive into the movie because there's a lot to explore in this movie, especially given how our characters, even though there's not a lot of characters in this movie, it shows us just how society itself would crumble. And it shows us the divide between two sects of people. We're talking race relations, we're talking socioeconomic status, everything I love to talk about on this channel. So let's dive into it. The movie itself starts off and we're following a middle-class white family who decide to take an impromptu vacation because I guess they're feeling overwhelmed or whatever. You know, they're middle class, so they decide to take a vacation and they go out into the country. And it's during this vacation that the world is ending. That's when the communications shut off. Society as a whole is crumbling, but they're not aware yet. That's because of essentially the way America's structured. If you're middle class, you go to work, you go home, you don't really know what's going on in the world. I mean, you have an idea, but you get it from the news, social media, etc. So they're pretty much trying to figure it out and they go home to their Airbnb. And it's at this time, towards the end of the night, that G.H. Washington and his daughter Ruth show up and knock on the door. And now the real clash of race, social economics, and essentially the clash of society begins to happen. Because you see, G.H., this is his house. He is a rich finance guy. He's on the board of the Philharmonic. He is the upper echelon society. This is his second home. He has a big home in the city. And this is just his other house that he decides to Airbnb when he's not using it. And the fact that G.H. is black subverts the typical socioeconomic tropes you would expect to see in a movie, because normally you would see the black middle class family and G.H., someone of G.H. stature usually is white or portrayed as white in films. And the fact that G.H. is black and you see the initial clash of race between G.H. and Amanda, because Amanda she's a Karen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She's a Karen through and through. She doesn't believe it's his house. Granted, I'm gonna shoot her some bail because the TVs aren't working, the phones aren't working, the internet's down, and let's just say the nigga shows up on the door, right? In the middle of the night saying this is his house. Like, because of the way we as a society structured, right? Even me saying that, shooting her some bail, the fact that that in itself is suspicious, a black man showing up in the middle of the night, dressed up to the nines saying this, like, that alone on surface level, that picture evokes suspicion in Amanda and a lot of people. And that again is by design. So those preconceived notions were put there not because of anything G.H. has done or Amanda has. They don't even know each other. But even though he shows this is his house, proof, it comes off as suspicious. And we, the audience, are made to be suspicious of G.H. as well, because just the way the scene is structured, we've been following Amanda's family this entire time so far in the beginning of the movie, and G.H. pops up. Granted, G.H. is the Deuteronomist of this story. He is the second main character, but because of the way he's introduced and the way he comes off, you see how she doesn't believe him. It's suspicious. The fact that Ruth is entitled, even though, you know, she is and was raised rich and rich kids are entitled, but the fact that she's black just rubs Amanda the wrong way. And it's evident there's a level of distrust, even though the social economic standards are flipped. This is G.H.'s house. So when G.H. shows up and he has the key to these things and he's opening it up and it's clearly his house, but the fact that he looks the way he looks, awfully suspicious. And that goes to show how America's society is going to start fracturing itself, because racial divide is a big subject matter in this country. With the history of America and the way this country was found, in general, the whole of America, you can't tell the story of America without racial relations, but we're not going to dive too deep into that in this video. While GH does come off as forthcoming, we see that both families are hiding information from each other. Amanda and her husband do not tell GH about the boat that crashed here, and GH has way more information than he's letting on because of the work he does and because of his socioeconomic standards and the people he rubs elbows with. He has a general idea of what's happening. He is in the know, even though he's not on the next level, the higher tier level of the cabal, so to speak. And we know who they are. We're talking about the billionaire class of society, the people who live just above it all. Even though he's not in that class, he's privy to certain information and he can react. That's why he decides to leave the city and go to his mansion, which he can seclude himself and kind of wait out what's going on. And when he gets there, we see that he has cash reserves lying around. He is more equipped to deal with this than Amanda and her family is. And he doesn't tell them exactly what's going on because, again, this is about managing resources at this point. And even though GH is a good man, he has a lot to deal with his wife missing, his daughter, and these are still strangers. Granted, this is the end of the world and they need each other. They both lie and manipulate one another because ultimately it is about survival of self. And once self-preservation becomes a factor in the human psyche, there's not a thing we won't do in order to survive. And that is the first phase of this attack, isolation. They cut off communication, turn down satellites. We as a society are so dependent on these satellites, like nothing modern works. Once our satellites are down, cell phones don't work, traffic lights, they can hack Tesla cars. I have a smart house, I have an Alexa, I have a smart lock. They can pretty much hack everything we do. Like our whole lives are in the palm of technology's hands. And even before we get into the debate of AI or whatever, the new form of warfare that is most devastating is cyber attacks as opposed to the old traditional, because old traditional guns wars, a war fought between soldiers, that takes a lot. You have to invade a country, you have to actually be there, send troops on the ground or send missiles and bombs. This, you can do it from a basement. You can have people just doing it from the comfort of their own home. And they can disrupt way more lives, cause way more damage. Airplanes falling out of the sky, hospitals shutting down, people who are on life support or who need oxygen, whatever the case they may need in the hospitals, all these emergency services shutting down, that is going to be a devastating blow. And then people are confused, panic, we're mistrusting each other and losing family members and not having a time to deal with this because GH's wife, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Her airplane fell off. GH's wife is dead. He understands that. He knows it to be true. The moment he saw the airplane crash, he knew it. And dealing with that loss, but not having the ability to do so. And Ruth trying to grapple with that. And she's lashing out, being sarcastic, being, like, let's be honest, she was being a bitch as well. But because she's scared, she's confused. Her mother's probably dead, most likely dead. And she's stuck with these strangers who are giving resistance, mainly Amanda. And Amanda herself is so self-absorbed, so self-concerned with her own situation, doesn't realize that these people are extending you a courtesy. After they left and the Teslas went crazy and they came back to GH's house, GH did not have to let them back in. He did not need them at that point. And quite frankly, his life would have been a little easier without them, if we're being honest. But he extended that gratitude, he extended that courtesy to them. And instead of being appreciative, Amanda just doubles down and triples down with her animosity. And while all this is happening, we're not even accounting for the wildlife going crazy and the fact that because of the way this warfare works, especially with the electromagnetic attacks and the sounds and fucking up the satellites in the stratosphere, all these electromagnetic waves kind of, animals have a sixth sense. I mean, humans can sense it to a certain degree too, but animals are more in tune with this. And we see different migrational patterns. We see overly aggressive deer showing up. And all that is, again, causing confusion, causing chaos, messing up patterns, technology has such a large grasp, strong grasp on the earth. Like, this shit is scary. And hope is bleak because this brings out the worst in people or the best in people. Again, because we see that the roles are reversed. We see how the middle class family is fucked up. Let's be realistic. Amanda is Amanda. And even her husband, Clay, even though he comes off as nice, like he left that Spanish woman. She needed help and he abandoned a woman in need because of what? Like, I don't understand that scene. She was confused and instead of helping, he just left her behind again because it was about managing resources. He even told Ruth about that. If this was the end of the world, we was not gonna tell you guys about the oil tanker because oil is a hot commodity. These people are extending their homes to you. These people have given you money to stay in their own house. They allowed you guys to stay, drink what they have. Like GH, even though he kept some stuff away from them, and that's only because you don't want to disseminate false information. He was trying to gather more information about what's happening, so he didn't overcommit to it. But he's extending kindness to these people, and they're lying to him, they're holding things from him, they're essentially using him. And it's funny that it is a white middle class family using an affluent black family who's extending courtesy to them. That is not lost on me. That subversion of modern society is not lost on me, and that adds even more poignant point to the world and shows just how all these social constructs really mean nothing in the face of human existence or the ending of human existence. Because even though the world is ending, their daughter Rosie is obsessed with the finale of Friends, and Friends as a whole just represents an entire subsection of society, of white society, and their obsession with this show. And Ruth in the movie brings up a very poignant point about Friends being a nostalgia-riddled show about an era that never existed, because the very premise of Friends, people working at coffee shops affording houses in Manhattan, is just insane. That was never a thing. And the fact that Friends glamorizes that is essentially what white middle class society aspires to be. And even in the face of the end of the world, Ruth is obsessed with it, to the point where she abandons her family to go leave the world behind and escape the actual reality of the world. And this movie is nothing if not a harsh look at reality as a whole. This is what the world looks like. This is what it is. There's rich, affluent black people. There's middle class, pseudo-racist white people. Like, this is the world as a whole. And if everything were stripped away, people's true colors would show and we would see where their values lie. And notice I didn't talk about the son because he's a dick, so fuck him. We're not really gonna spend more time on him. He lost his tooth. But overall, this movie's so good, and there's so many questions that it evokes. There's so much things about this movie that can be related to real world and warfare, and just the way right now, if everything were to happen in the movie were to happen here, the way this attack is structured, we would be in the same situation. Even though we've seen this movie, we'd understand what would happen. Our innate human biases kick in, and we would begin acting like the characters in the movie. But guys, that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, binge on.